Okay, Radwan.
Thank you, Professor John. I would to thank the Center of Study of Islam and Democracy. I agree with much what Nader and Hussein mentioned regarding the characterization of the Trump's the lack of strategy towards the foreign policy toward the Middle East, unpredictability, and in all of that. But what I'm trying to focus here in more about views from the Arab region or in the Middle East. I believe that, or my key argument that the democracy and the human rights became the collateral damage of the U.S.-Arab relations. After the U.S. invasion of Iraq, and especially the second Bush administration adopted what's called the Freedom Agenda. And Condoleezza Rice went into the Cairo University and she said in very famous speech that 60 years of our support of dictatorship regime, we discovered the mistakes of doing that. And now we are adopting different policy and different strategy where actually democracy is the basic elements of the new policy, the Freedom Agenda. But what's happened that because the Freedom Agenda, it's combined with the US invasion of Iraq, there was too much resistance from the region. Not only from autocrats, but also from the democratic and human rights activists in the region. We can check actually large number of statements accusing the U.S. of actually bringing the democracy on the U.S. troops. And this is why was a rejection to the new U.S. policy. What's happened that when Obama came and start his administration by very famous speech of a new relationship between the U.S. and the Muslim world in the Cairo University again, and then he decided to have retreat of the Freedom Agenda, and developed what he called that the mutual interest of the two relationship and the need of the new or the Arab governments to adopt a new governance policy to be able to have much better relationship with the U.S. But at that time in the Obama era, what the Arab Spring happens. The Arab Spring happened. It's like the earthquake in the region, which actually happened in 5 countries that the leaders, the autocrats, in Egypt more than 30 years, in Syria more than actually 50 years, in Libya 40 years. The Obama administration was very skeptical of what's the right approach of doing that. In the beginning they said we need to lead from behind, we don't need actually for this Arab revolution to see that as reflection of the US thumb and all of that. Then as Obama himself said in the interview with the Atlantic, by mistake he went into Libya and led into regime change after the adoption of the resolution 1973 at the UN. But after the mistake he admitted himself, he decided to withdraw from the whole region. Even there was a huge demand from the region on relation of the U.S. support of democracy and respect of human rights. Then at that time, maybe if the region they have Bush administration, maybe we will have different outcome of the Arab Spring we have it right now. But I'm saying that when we have high demand from the U.S., we have actually resistance from the region. Then when the region they have high demand for more democratic voices from the U.S. administration, we have withdraw from the U.S. administration. And the Obama conclude its policy after 8 years of what Philip Gordon, his advisor, the national security, said that Obama discovered that a full intervention in Iraq was a mistake, half intervention in Libya was a mistake, and no intervention in Syria was a disaster. I mean, disasters in any ways. Then why the U.S. needs to intervene or at least to spend any political or any resources, even diplomatic resources, in carrying on the region, which I believe that the Obama at that time reflecting what the left adopted in its the U.S. left in its division, that the U.S. is a mess. And this is actually reflection, if we can see what's after Johnson in invention in Vietnam. Nixon actually won the election because withdraw from Vietnam, and that's the famous also pivot into China. With the same time, at that time, all the talks within the U.S. circles that they called of the South Asia fatigue. That we are actually tired from Laos, Vietnam, and then what's happened in Cambodia. One of the historical genocide happened in 19. The U.S. decided to withdraw from the region. The same norm adopted in the Middle East, especially into Syria, where actually the Obama administration decided withdraw into the region and pivot into Iran, have actually better relation with the autocrat into Iran, and don't care about what's happened in the war crimes and crimes against humanity committed every day in Syria, and repeating the same term. If you looked actually into the Obama speech in the last 2 years, he repeated at least 67 times that the Middle East is a mess. The same like South Asia fatigue, now the same, we have the same term, Middle East is the mess. Then why we need to do anything anyway? If we intervene or non-intervene, it's the same results. Now we have new Trump administrations. Unfortunately, the candidate Trump, it was running on the same concept of non-intervention, doing nothing, and focusing only on ISIS and Daesh in the region, and put a blind on the issues of democracy and human rights. This is why that's too much anticipated. That's when he take office into the White House, welcoming Sisi, and actually giving different comments, ignoring completely the issue of human rights. Even in the first time in 37 years, the Secretary Tillerson did not attend the launch of the State Department Human Rights Report, annual report. That's give us a sense that the Trump administration will not put the issue of human rights and democracy in its agenda. But with the same time, there is no actually coordinated strategy or policy how to deal with the region, with the Middle East region, and this is actually the lack of part. At the same time, if we look into the last survey done by the Arab Center, they do the polls of the Arab opinion in 12 different Arab countries, including Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Palestine, Sudan, Jordan, Iraq, and Lebanon. And because it done that from 2012 until 2016, the last one, we can see actually have a trend within the public opinion. In the last one done in 2016, we have 68% of the Arab public opinion support of democracy. Among them, actually 52, they agree of any political party reach the power, even they disagree with the political party itself. I mean, they don't put it as a priority that to have an Islamic party into power or a secular party into power, which actually maybe this is the first time a sense of of the Arab understanding of pluralism and the needs of the smooth transition of power. And this is why the survey itself reflects the high demand of the need of the democracy and the need of the new way of good governance. But unfortunately, that the Trump administration did not reflect this is the demand. And this is why I think that the issue of the collateral damage will continue with the Trump administration. Will continue because the region live right now in the worst era, especially in what I call it the failed Arab transition, comparing to other regions in Latin America or in Eastern Europe. 4 of the 5 countries broke out into civil war. Syria, Yemen, Libya, and one of the countries actually returned into military governments like in Egypt. And an only shining example was in Tunisia, and not because of the US support. When actually the severe political crisis in Tunisia in 2014 between the secularists and the Islamists, the European Union stepped in and actually broke the negotiations to reach the issue of grand coalition and grand government, and where the US was under the Obama not interested at all, even playing the role of the diplomatic convener as they did in Eastern Europe. This is why I believe that, and responding to what Professor John mentioned regarding the trajectory of the Arab, the Arab world, I believe that the issue of the transition will dominate the discussion in the region until actually we can figure out how to deal with the 3 issues. The first one, which I believe that played the key role in explaining why the Arab transition failed, at the same time succeed in Latin America or in Eastern Europe. The first one, we have the role of the Arab League. The Arab League, it's still a very autocratic organization. If we compare that to what's happened in Eastern Europe, where actually the European Union played a key role in putting the principles and democratization process in all the Eastern Europe countries. Those countries actually, for them to expand and to join the EU, they have to set principles of democracy and free market. Now the Arab League did not play any role. They played a minor role in Libya, then actually they stepped back. The second issue, in all the transition in Latin America or Eastern Europe, the communist parties or the BA regime, the bureaucratic authoritarian regime, or the juntas in Latin America, the old regime have to help the new regimes, have to go through actually negotiations, because the old regime will understand actually governing the country the same way as we did in the last 30 or 20 years is impossible. And this is, unfortunately, as Arabs, we never learn this small conclusion. Look into Egypt right now. Actually, Sisi is going the same track that Mubarak did. Never actually, if he asked himself that Mubarak, after 30 years, without having a revolution, failed on governing Egypt. Now, what's the chance of Sisi of doing the same way of governance, of governing Egypt in the same way? This is why it's important the old regimes, they help. Unfortunately, in Yemen, in Libya, in Syria, the old regime resists any transition into going into new way of governance. The three and the factor the role of the Islamists and the ideological political parties. I think it's all the political parties. Now, in the region, we have a wave of the rising of the Islamist or the ideological Islamic parties. Some of them adopt the democracy concept, like in Tunisia, but others, they still very skeptical of accepting the reality that the revolution happened not because the public opinion, they need Islamists in power, rather than because there is a social and economic crisis they have to answer. And sometimes this is why the Islamists have to accept the reality of power sharing, the reality of accepting that there is no perfect transition. The transition has to come as a conclusion, has to be inclusive, and this is why I think without answering these key questions, the fate of the Arab League, the answer of how the old regime has to help the new rising oppositions, and the third, how the Islamists will address the issue of that transition, I don't see actually a brighter future to the region.
Oh, so gloomy. Thank you. Thank you.